I wanted to get your comments further on some developments that it appears the Defense Department, the State Department, uh, appear to be very concerned about, and maybe even quietly panicking about, which is the situation in the region as a whole. So you have the Red Sea, you have Yemen's armed forces led by the Houthis, essentially conducting regular captures, strikes. Norwegian vessels have been hit, French vessels. There have been many targets thus far, and some vessels have actually been captured. And then you also have a situation. I'll pull up the report in Iraq, and the resistance, what's called the Islamic resistance in Syria and Iraq, have been quite active as well. So let me just pull this up. So here's a report from the Associated Press. Iraq scrambles to contain fighting between U.S. troops and Iran-backed groups. This is what they always say. They're Iran-backed groups fearing Gaza spillover. But essentially, it's the resistance in Iraq and Syria, which have committed dozens and dozens of attacks on U.S. installations, bases, etc. So this appears to be more and more of a concern for the United States side. What is your, I guess, assessment of this particular aspect of the conflict, the regional situation in particular, how Yemen, how these resistance forces in Iraq and in part Syria, and of course just broader regionally, how this has been playing out, and how does it affect the military situation in the conflict overall?
Well, let's start with Yemen and the Houthi. First of all, let's just make it clear that while Iran, I apologize if I've mispronounced that. I'm American, so it is what it is. I don't mean any insult by it. But the Iranians have been, they create something called the axis of resistance. And, it stretches from Lebanon, where Hezbollah is, through Syria, into Iraq with the pro-Iranian militias, Iran, and then down into Yemen with the Houthi. And Iran, provides, and I guess Hamas is thrown into that now too. And Iran provides financial resources and in some cases direct military assistance. With Yemen, there's no doubt that Iran has been providing Yemen with the resources necessary to take on Saudi Arabia in a war by proxy, ballistic missiles, drone capabilities, etc. But the Houthi do what the Houthi want to do. It ain't like the Houthi say, oh, big brother Iran's got to tell us what to do. The Houthi woke up and said, screw it, baby, we're going to war. We're fighting in defense of the Palestinians. And Iran's going, no, don't. We're trying to manage this escalation here. We don't want you. But the Houthi are the wild boys of the Middle East, and they're just like, yeehaw, go. And they start firing missiles, they firing stuff. And now they've done something that really hurts, is because this, I guess it's a Strait of Al Babel or Man, I can't pronounce it, but the little narrow thing on the, where the Red Sea comes into the Gulf of Aden, there's a narrow little passageway where all the ships have to go through, and they're in the range of everything the Yemenis have. And the Yemenis have said, as long as Israel's doing what they're doing in Gaza, no shipping will be allowed to go through if it's heading to Israel. And they're sink. I don't think they think they've sunk stuff, but they've hit stuff, put it on fire. They've captured stuff. And so now what's happening is that, ships are very expensive, and the owners don't like their ships to catch on fire or be captured. And so they're diverting all the way around Africa, coming in the other way to get to Israel. And that's very, very expensive. It's costing Israel tens of billions of dollars of denied economic activity. And so the Houthi are actually very sophisticated here. This is a very sophisticated weapon that they've dealt the Israelis. And the United States is going, damn it, now we got to respond here. But if we respond there, we got to take those forces and move in here. And remember, we've already said we don't have any money for this. All those aircraft carriers that we deployed to scare Hezbollah, it's basically eating up the Navy's operational budget, meaning money that was supposed to be set aside for training and other things is now being spent on these operations, which means there's no training taking place. There's other things that aren't happening. And now you want to expand naval operations into this area. Where's the money coming from? This is why the U.S. Navy is calling up the Australians and saying, hey, get some of your ships up here right now. We need you to take care of the security. And the Australians are going, no, we're not going to do that. This is a problem for the United States because we don't have the force structure to do everything at once. And so the Houthi have dealt a huge blow, not only to Israel, but to the United States. And the only way that we could rectify this is to go to war against them. But the Saudis have been using American-provided aircraft and American intelligence since 2014, and they haven't beat the Houthi yet. And then again, who's going to pay for this? Where's the money coming from? We're going to have another war in Yemen, a forever war. And none of these wars have gone well for us. And if we go to war against the Houthi, the whole region's going to blow up. The axis of resistance will just go haywire. These militias that are firing against American forces in Iraq and in Syria, believe it or not, are holding back. They could do a lot more. They're simply reminding the Americans that they're here and that there will be price to be paid so long as this conflict goes on, that nothing is free. And what has the United States done? We've responded very minimally. We've bombed a couple warehouses associated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command, but we've bombed those warehouses before in I guess Abu Kamal across the river from Al-Qaim. We've been hitting that place, the same place over and over again. It's like the Iranians go, okay, rebuild the warehouse so America can bomb it next week, kind of thing. We're not doing real harm on the Iranians because we don't want to. If we do real harm on the Iranians, then they get involved. And now we're talking about an expansive conflict, and we only got 2,000 guys in that region. That ain't a lot of guys. And if the whole region blows up, those 2,000 guys can be swamped. They can be overrun. And now we have to divert all our air power into that area. Again, who's going to pay for it? We don't have a budget for this. And now we're doing that. And this war gets out of control, spins out of control. This is a nightmare scenario for the Biden administration. And if it blows up enough, because another area that everybody's worried about is what's going to happen with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has done a masterful job of escalation management. They have been, I mean, it's like the Israelis, are sitting there in this boxing match with Hamas, and Hamas split the eye, and Israel's bleeding here, and Hezbollah is just sitting there once in a while going, "Let me rub some salt in that wound for you." And come on, get out of here, boom, boom, pow, and they get salt in that wound. Stop it, Hezbollah is just sitting there pissing them off because they're really, really putting, and it's hurting them. Remember how sophisticated I said the Houthi were. Understand that most of what Hezbollah is doing against Israel is economic in nature. Yes, they're taking down Israeli troops. They're destroying a lot of Israeli tanks, a lot of Israeli infrastructure. But what they're really doing is terrorizing the north so much that 70,000 Israelis had to be withdrawn from the northern settlements and resettled in temporary accommodations. That ain't free. That ain't free. It's costing Israel billions of dollars. And that 70,000 who, they had jobs up there, which means they're working, they're producing, there's taxes, the economy kind of stuff. They're here now. They ain't working. They ain't producing. They're just sucking up resources. It's a huge, huge, giant, gutting of the Israeli economy. The same thing out of what Hamas is doing in the settlements in Negev. People tens of thousands had to be relocated. Man, this is a giant hole in the Israeli economy, and it's unsustainable. On top of that, 300,000 reservists. You know what a reservist is? It's a working man. It's a guy who has a job. He has a family. He is participating in the Israeli economic experience. And now he's not. Now he's in the reserves where he's getting a paycheck because they have to pay him, but he's not producing anything. That job is gapped. Whatever he was doing in the Israeli economy ain't happening right now. And billions of dollars. So what Hezbollah is doing, what the Houthi are doing, the economic impact on this is destroying the Israeli economy, destroying it. And this is unsustainable for Israel. So this alone is prompting the Israelis to say, we have to resolve this fight. You got people like Gallant. I think he's the Minister of Defense right now. What a character, with his genocidal talk. But he's talking about we're going to take it to them. Gallant knows, though, and so does the Israeli Defense Force, that if Israel were to open up a second front against Hezbollah, that Hezbollah will take Galilee, that northern Israel will fall. Because Hezbollah's got 80,000 guys. Many of them, most of them perhaps, are combat hardened. That means they've been fighting in that, the Syrian conflict. These guys know war. They're very well trained, very well equipped, very well motivated, and they have a plan. If you think the Hamas plan that was executed on October 7th was innovative, you haven't seen anything yet. Hezbollah has a plan to take northern Israel, and they will take northern Israel, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop it, which is a nightmare. So nobody wants escalation. So in a way, because we can't afford to escalate, the United States can't afford to escalate, Israel can't afford to escalate, you make it even, you give the people who are putting the pressure on you even more latitude because they know you don't want to escalate. So they're going to push the envelope even more and create more and more pressure. And that's what's happening right now. This is the untold aspect of this war, but it's this aspect that's probably going to promote, the collapse of Israel more so than just Hamas defeating Israel in Gaza.
Yeah, and maybe lastly on this, do you feel like the confluence of these various aspects of Israel's brutal onslaught and what it's produced, both in its troubles with fighting Hamas on its own terrain and the fact that that there is an axis of resistance that has been managing a conflict escalator that is prepared to move up. Do you feel like, given that Biden has given this deadline, that Israel will actually follow it? Because Israel's capacity for rational military and political behavior, especially since the aftermath of October 7th, appears to have diminished nearly to non-existence. I'm curious on your thoughts about that.
I mean, it's a tough political question here in America because of the control that the Israeli lobby has over everything. Congress, the presidency, the media, the spin. So it's an uphill struggle to get America to, change its policy regarding Israel. In the past, it was Israel can do no wrong. We support Israel no matter what. But we're now paying a price for that. And so I do believe you're going to see pressure being put on Israel. I think Netanyahu is finished. I think he's going to go. I think Biden is going to make it clear that continued American support of Israel is contingent upon a change in the Netanyahu government. We pretend that it doesn't mean Netanyahu is going to go, but if you dissolve this right-wing coalition, then Netanyahu can't continue as prime minister because it's consensus-driven. He has to get a ruling coalition. He won't be able to. Somebody else will step in and take over, and that's what we want. But here's the danger of all this, Danny. Here's the problem. And we got to be honest about this, because right now we're being lulled into a false sense of complacency. Hamas is kicking ass. There's no doubt about it. Hamas will not be defeated. But who likes Hamas? Does Egypt like Hamas? Nope. Does Jordan like Hamas? No. Does Syria like Hamas? Not really. They were just at war with them a couple of years ago. They tolerate Hamas. Turkey? Yeah, Turkey likes Hamas, but not that much. Not enough to go to war for them. And the further we get away, you realize that Hamas is very unpopular. And if we just erase the term Hamas and insert the term Palestinian, let's be honest, nobody cares about the Palestinians. There's a whole bunch of demonstrations taking place right now, but these are cause-effect demonstrations, meaning that if it weren't for the slaughter of the Gazans, these demonstrations wouldn't be happening. These people aren't going to go into the streets and demonstrate on behalf of a two-state solution or a one-state solution or a free Palestine. They're demonstrating because the bombing's happening. So what happens when the bombs stop falling, when the genocide stops? Are these people going to continue to be out there putting the pressure on the United States? Is the United States going to continue to feel isolated, or is it going to go back to what it was, where people say, wait a minute, so they've stopped, we don't have to turn on TV and look at dead Palestinian babies anymore? Oh, thank God. So let's get back to what we were doing, which is chugging along with normal economic activity where the Palestinians are problematic. We don't want to do it. And so the danger here is that all the sacrifice that the Palestinians have made, and believe me, they are making this the suffering they're doing through, and you see there's a growing recognition amongst them that they have to do this. This is their burden to pay to get statehood. That all of that will be for naught, because there will be a desire to we don't want to embarrass Israel. We don't want to humiliate Israel. We're going to look for a compromise solution where we have a moderate Israeli government who will return to giving lip service to, reviving Oslo, but never really being serious about reviving Oslo. And gradually, the Palestinians will be forgot again. I'm afraid that's the direction that we're heading. And so, it's imperative that the international community find a way to sustain this pressure, because change will happen, because the United States feels the pressure. I mean, when we start turning on Israel, the pressure is working. All right. But the problem is, let's say we get Israel to change, the fighting stops in Gaza. Now the United Nations comes in with their, because the UN doesn't like the Palestinians either. I mean, nobody likes the Palestinians. They've been getting screwed by everybody forever. And so you start turning it over to these old institutions, and it's forgotten. The only one out there articulating right now for the Palestinians seriously is Iran. And here's where the hope is, because Iran has good relations with two nations who are the nemesis of the United States in the geopolitical arena, Russia and China. And Russia and China have historically kept sort of a hands-off approach to the Palestinian issue. But I think Russia and China, I think they do care about the Palestinians. There's a genuine concern. You see, Putin articulating things that no Western leader has ever articulated about what Israel is doing, criticizing Israel. And China's talking about getting engaged. And it's in China's interest to take advantage of what's going on to expand. Because what is Gaza going to need? Infrastructure development. Who's pretty good at that? China. So it's an opportunity for China. It also, if you keep pushing the necessity of a Palestinian state to resolve this Arab-Israeli conflict, you keep putting pressure on the United States too. What the United States wants to do is quickly get back to, even though Biden says that we won't be returning to October 6th, I guarantee you all the U.S. wants to do is get back to October 6th. That's all we want to do. We're not looking forward to any of this innovative political stuff in the Middle East. It scares us. Russia and China, on the other hand, are looking forward to something like that. So I'm not giving up hope for the Palestinians, but I am saying that all this stuff that we're seeing, all this pressure, these votes at the UN, that can disappear that quick. And you know it. You know it can, because we're not talking about, a deep foundation of love for the Palestinians out there in the world. We don't like seeing dead Palestinian kids. So people are rallying to the cause of Palestine. But when the kids stop dying, will that support for Palestine still be there? And that's the big question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big question, and I share your sentiment about where the hope is, because yes, Iran is indeed a very serious actor when it comes to supporting Palestine. And I think you're exactly right. Both Russia and China, when it comes to this region, see the Palestine question as both one of course, standing for international law. That's what Russia and China like to do. They like to promote it because it's within their interests. Most stable, rational countries who are thinking about both their own development and what's good for the world in terms of their own development. It's stability. It's peace. It's not having this massive conflict, which could lead, that's genocidal in nature, that could lead to a very hot war between most countries in the region. That is an ultimate disaster for Russia and China. So, of course, this Palestine question is so important to to not just stabilize, but also, Russia and China are the only countries outside of the region for the most part, outside of some outliers that don't have the same kind of influence. But the biggest countries that do support a Palestinian state and legitimately do, not giving lip service like Blinken does when he says we're for this two-state solution, and then green lights the absolute eradication of it that Israel is pursuing. Both Russia and China actually do support this.